Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole Masson and I'm so excited to have you here today. Today I'm going to be talking about, what homeschooling has taught me. But before I dive in, if you're new here, I would love to have you stick around. I post anything from homeschooling videos to motherhood encouragement, and then sometimes I breadcrumb in some DIY projects around our house. So if any of that resonates with you, I'd love to have you click that subscribe button. And let's dive into today's video. I'm going to be taking you along as I clean up and do some household chores in between homeschooling, but I wanted to share with you something that I just felt on my heart to share. And honestly, it's, homeschooling in general, it completely changed the kind of mom I am. And this is not a video to boast by any means, but just share, how God transformed me and is still working on me day in and day out. And I hope this video will be encouraging to the moms that maybe feel like kind of lost in this season. Maybe you feel like you're failing. Maybe the mom guilt's kicking in. These are things that I have felt so much, and so I just want to be that voice of encouragement, to lean in and look inward and see how God's molding you into the mother that you're meant to be. So when I started homeschool roughly 8 years ago, I only had one child. And I can just remember being so excited to start preschool at home. I'd actually seen a mom on Instagram sharing her curriculum that she was doing with her preschooler, and I thought, I've got to do this. This is going to be awesome. And I was just so excited. And my daughter at the time, so we had actually moved states. So we were moving to a new state. She was turning 3 that year. So it was like a 2 and 3-year-old program that I had purchased. And in those first couple years of homeschooling, they felt so calm and honestly pretty manageable. We did our lessons right at her little school table, and then we'd clean up and then head to the pool. And I felt like, okay, this is going well. I thought that success meant that, we finished what I, had planned for that day, and my child was understanding the material. So that's how I measured the success. And at the time, I believed homeschooling was mostly about, raising a smart child. Hence me starting so early. I didn't do that with my second. And if you're doing that now, no worries. I'm not knocking that. But I don't start formal lessons now until they're at least 5. But I believed, that, it was important just to be staying on track, not falling behind, doing it the right way. And then more kids came. And suddenly our homeschooling didn't just happen at our quiet little table anymore. It would happen while, we're holding babies. Maybe, I'm answering my kindergartner, reheating coffee, stopping lessons every 5 minutes. It was just happening in the cracks and whatever we could find of our day. And that's when I started seeing things I never would have noticed otherwise. It's funny how God has a way of exposing those things in you that you didn't even know were there. So I used to think I was patient. My mom would laugh if she heard me say that, but I really did think I was patient until I had a child who moved slower than my plans. I also thought that I was a gentle parent until I was asked the same question 10 times in 5 minutes. I thought I was calm until the baby cried while 2 kids needed my help, and someone spilled water on the math book, and the dog needs to go outside, and, I thought I was calm. But homeschooling didn't, reveal, my kids' struggles. It revealed my reactions. And instead of rushing past those moments, I started realizing that those were the places I was being changed. And the hard days, honestly, stopped feeling so pointless. They started feeling so much more purposeful. Not because everything was going smoothly, but because I could see the growth happening in me while I was asking it of my children. And God wasn't just teaching my children through our days. He was teaching me in the middle of them. And I've learned a lot about my children through these seasons. I saw, which child shuts down when they're feeling overwhelmed. I've gone to see which one rushes because they're afraid of being wrong, which one acts silly when they're just actually insecure, and, which one needs me sitting beside them just to try. And I realized something that a lot of what I thought were behavior problems in my kids were actually just heart struggles. And for a season, our mornings were probably the hardest part of our day, especially after the twins were born. Because every time we would sit down to start school, because that was our typical routine, during my pregnancy, that's when the babies needed me. And, being pulled between newborns and, trying to still keep up with homeschool, that was a very tough season for us. I absolutely loved the newborn season, so do not get me wrong when I say that. I always feel guilty for sharing that I felt like it was hard, but it wasn't hard because, they were newborns and like God had just blessed us with two, healthy, beautiful babies. It was hard because I could not figure out how to balance all of it. And it just felt impossible to get through even, the first lesson. And I actually heard someone say this once, and I clung to it in the season, that God sometimes gives you a clingy child or two to slow you down. And I didn't really understand that until I had the twins, and what a blessing it was. And I really do feel like learning to slow down has blessed me in more ways than I can count. So now the twins are, they'll be 2 in May, and they naturally want to be where I am, climbing into my lap, during reading, bringing me books while I'm helping, another child, wanting to nurse the moment I sit down. And at first my instinct was always to just work around them, set them up with some toys, move them somewhere safe, hurry through the lesson before they needed me again, and everything felt rushed. But then I learned that homeschooling doesn't really allow a rushed life. And I started realizing that my toddlers weren't just interrupting our day. They were wanting to be a part of it. And when I slowed down enough to give them that first, the whole atmosphere of our home changed. So our mornings started flowing better, and honestly, us as a whole just felt calmer. And strangely enough, the slower, I let our days be, the more peaceful they became. So now we truly do just begin our days together first. Sitting, talking, like I love welcoming, each of my children as they come, into the living room in the morning, and I want them to see my, bright, bubbly face. They probably get sick of it because I'm pretty energetic when I get to see them in the mornings. But, and maybe that is just, cuddling up on the couch for an episode of Little Bear. Like, I like my kids to feel seen before, I ask them to wait while I help their, other siblings get started. And honestly, I thank God for my heart shift in the season. I think that was one of the first times I realized that I can push through behavior all day long. I can try to balance everything. I can try to manage everything, or I could just step back and ask what the need was underneath all of that. And I couldn't rush anymore. So now I will be the first to tell you that we still have hard days. And I want to tell you that because I don't want you to think that we've got it all figured out. There's days we still don't finish math. Maybe, one of the twins aren't napping, or maybe they, need a contact nap and we're on the couch doing lessons. Maybe, someone's got a bad attitude that morning. And that actually, it reminded me that, instead of just correcting behavior, I start asking questions. One great resource that I snagged recently, and I'll actually share it in the description for you guys. I found this mom on Instagram. She's a homeschooling mom too, and she shares, she doesn't have a lot, but I know she has the biblical parenting resource cards, which is what I snagged, and I think a couple more home guides. But these cards, y'all, are great for just redirecting behavior in a positive, God-honoring way. And so I actually grabbed for these cards the other morning when one of my children were having a hard time with just being quick to anger. And I love these cards because there's a Bible verse, and then you flip them over and it kind of gives you guidance on how to direct the behavior. And then there's questions you can ask. So once my child calmed down, I grabbed this card, I read them the Bible verse, and then we went through the questions, and I just felt like it resolved it so much. So I will link those in the description. And, for us now, like that's an example of like our school days honestly have turned more into conversations than just instruction all the time. I care a lot less now about finishing every lesson and a lot more about who they're becoming while we do them. I've also had to face a lot of hard things in myself. I realized how much I love control, how much I depend on just quiet and order to feel peaceful in our home, and how quickly I correct it without listening. And being with my kids all day showed me my weaknesses. I'm sure y'all can relate. Being with your kids will expose those things, and I know it's the Lord, doing that. But honestly, it changed me in a lot of ways. Homeschooling changed me. The Lord changed me through it, and I just feel like I've become more patient. Not every day in every situation, and I'm definitely not saying I'm perfect at this, but each day it just gives me another chance to practice. I compare a lot less now because I know each of my children so deeply, and I see how differently that, they learn and how they respond and how they receive love. And it's harder to measure them against anyone else once you really know who they are. And I definitely don't look outward for constant approval the way I used to. I think that confidence came from just years of doing this, and it's helped me stop feeling like I owe everyone an explanation for what's best for our family. I don't spend my energy defending every decision anymore, because that matters where you're placing that energy. And homeschool moms can face a lot of opinions and a lot of pressure, and for a while I carried that with me all day. And I could say that just as motherhood in general, we face a lot of opinions. But I remind myself to save that energy for what actually matters, which is, my home, my husband, my kids, and the work set right in front of me. There's a lot more peace when you stop trying to prove your choices and just live them. So in all of this, I thought I was just choosing an education method when we first made that decision all those years ago. But really, over time I've learned I chose a life with my kids that I don't regret one bit. And just for the record, homeschooling definitely hasn't made me a perfect mom. And I want to share that with you guys because I feel like, Instagram, YouTube, it can become a highlight reel. But I want to share with you guys, the areas that, I felt exposed in, the places that, I knew I needed to grow in. And the Lord has given me the time to grow right alongside my children through these seasons of hard. So if your days are feeling slower now, maybe, you're in a harder season of homeschool, maybe that checklist isn't getting finished, or, you spent more time guiding hearts than teaching lessons, that doesn't mean that the day was wasted. Honestly, some of the most important work happening in our homes can't be measured on a page. I feel like it shows up later, in the trust that we're building with our kids, in their character, in the relationships we're fostering. We are not just educating our children here, friends. We're building a life with them. And sometimes the quiet, ordinary days end up being the ones that actually mattered most. So before I let y'all go today, I'd love to hear from y'all in the comments. Just share what homeschooling has taught you. And maybe you're in a season of learning right now. Maybe you're in a season of growing. What areas are you feeling, that the Lord is exposing that you need growth in? I know in those harder seasons, I definitely see where the Lord is growing me. And I love to visualize like winter being like my hard seasons, and maybe call that seasonal depression where I think of winter as being the hard. But I love to think, okay, I'm in the hard, but spring is coming, and like there's so much growth and beauty, and look forward to the things that the Lord is going to do, in me and through me. And I want to hear, that from you guys. So I just want to thank y'all for being here. I hope this video was encouraging. If any of this resonated with you and you're not subscribed, I'd love to have you click that subscribe button. And I hope to see all of y'all in the next video.